All right, now it's a beautiful day and I'm back. I I was a little disappointed because yesterday I actually missed being able to walk. I had something that I didn't want to do yesterday and I knew that I had to do it. And I also know myself well enough to say, if I end up throwing something else in here, I may be in the space where I don't do the thing that I have to do. Anyway, I have a lot on my mind today. I did not pull a card for us to talk, but I want to talk about something that I experienced yesterday. So, I've alluded previously that I grew up in the church. And yeah, I grew up in the church, age of 8, and always had lots of questions. Felt like those questions weren't always answered or weren't answered in a way that actually made sense to me. So while I understood as much as I possibly could, the thing I think that I understood the most in church at a younger age was, yes, God loved me. And yes, there was this place called hell. And that, gosh, do I want to have this conversation? This doesn't. The reason why I'm hesitating in having this conversation is because I don't want it to come off as judgment towards anyone's beliefs. You know, I think that everyone has the right to be sovereign in their own life. I think that that is a part of our divinity, right? Our connection to God means that we're here in this experience with God. We have a relationship with spirit, our source, whatever you want to call it, right? And that relationship is between them and us. And so there's going to be decisions that we make. There's going to be things that we do that are unique to our experience as an individual, as a unique individual, as a diverse individual. And so I really want you to hear me when I say I am not in judgment toward anyone's beliefs. I am sharing with you my journey and how I have cultivated a relationship with the divine that I am confident in. So I guess that disclaimer's here, so I guess we're doing this. So I knew that there was a place called hell and there was the devil. And when we did good, we were following God. And when we did bad, we were following the devil. But none of us were ever good enough to actually be with God unless we accepted Jesus into our heart. That was basically the gist of what I was taught as a child. It came in really fun ways. I'll be really honest with you. Like, there were puppets and there were big, fluffy dog suits that people sang songs and dances. There were big blue books that sang songs about God's love. And, you know, as a child, it was really interesting. It was really entertaining. But as I got older, it was about middle school, I really started to question how real all this stuff was. And again, I would ask questions and I felt like I didn't really get the answers that made the most sense to me. But I was a kid, you know. And I mean, even if I didn't believe it, it was probably a good idea to believe it because there was this place called hell and you were going to go there if you didn't ask God into your heart. And there was these movies that they made us watch, The Left Behind, and they told us about the end times and how if you lived right and you had Jesus in your heart, that you wouldn't be left behind when Jesus comes back. And I mean, it was a terrifying movie. I was terrified of the book of Revelation. So I'm recognizing that there was a lot of fear. So I didn't do a lot of the youth group stuff in middle school, only the stuff my mom made me go to. I'd rather go to football games and cheer. And so in high school, really didn't spend a lot of time with the youth group. But when I went to college, I stopped going to church altogether. It was like, yeah, finally, I don't have to do that anymore. But there was this nagging feeling, kind of like, oh, you don't want to be left behind. And I remember actually in 2001, when there was the terrorist attack, 9/11, I remember seeing a plane flying into a building. And that was one of the things, that was one of the pictures that they would talk about. Like, people were just going to start disappearing. The people who were here for God or who had Jesus in their heart would start disappearing. And then everybody else who were sinners, they were going to be left behind, and they were going to have to go through this terrible turmoil they called the tribulation. So I saw that plane fly into that building, and I thought, it can't possibly, it's the end of time. You know, it's going to start happening. And I remember falling to my knees and being like, God, I'm sorry, you know, sorry for what? You know, wasn't an axe murderer. I was going to school. I was, you know, I was a good person, right? But good people, you know, you had to be living a certain way in order for you to not be left behind. So anyway, when I found out that it wasn't the rapture that caused that, kind of, you know, went back to how I was living and not really thinking much about it. And then I got pregnant. And I remember having to decide, you know, how was I going to do this? I was living away from my family in another city. I was still finishing school. And I remember talking to my mom and, you know, her saying, well, talk about you coming home. And again, my mom was heavy in the church. My sister too. She was younger though. And I don't remember if this actually happened or not, but I feel like it did. And I love my mom and my sister, but I think that there was a level of embarrassment because I was pregnant, and they wanted to make sure that it was okay with everybody for me to move back home. And me moving back home meant that now I was thrown into the church. And so there was a lot of feeling like I had to be perfect, feeling like I couldn't mess things up, feeling like everybody's eyes were on me, that they were judging me. And so I had a lot of shame and guilt. And I think that is what really plunged me back into Christianity in a very big way. And it was because I definitely felt that I was being judged. Although they loved me, I mean, they were very kind and nice, but you know, when you grow up in something that says certain things are wrong and you end up doing that thing, it just felt like I had to be perfect in order to come home and to really, I don't know, I guess I hesitate to say it because I don't think I've ever even really talked about this before. But I felt like all eyes were on me, that I was this huge failure, that I was this cautionary tale, and that I had to earn my space back. And so, again, I dealt with a lot of shame and guilt. And I think it was because I knew what they believed. You know, I kind of wonder if I had not grown up in that type of situation where having sex out of marriage was a sin, would I have felt the way that I did for such a long time. And I even wrote a book about it. I wrote a book. It was called Life of My Dreams, and it was an allegory about my life. And what came up in that was how much shame and guilt I was holding, I was carrying, and that I didn't need to, that I could release it. I gave birth to my son in 2004, and I wrote this book in 2009. And even at that time, I was trying to find a way to release the shame and the guilt. And at that time, the only person that I knew that could help me with that was Jesus. And that it was like, well, if this person laid it all down, paid the price for me and my mistakes, then all I can do now is make sure I live in a way that really honors them. And that's when I can be free. So that was really relieving. And because that was my freedom for my guilt and shame, I was really grateful. And I led worship. I did youth conferences. I did senior citizen events. I was active in the church. I started working for the church. So fast forward to 2016, where there was a lot of things going on. There was an election. Half of the church voted for an individual that was just very racist, very bigoted. Actually, I'm going to run it back to 2008 when a lot of racism started popping up within the church that I could see.